Welcome to another Business Spotlight, where we share insights, reflections, and pearls of wisdom from local business owners. My name is Kerry James. I'm a business coach and facilitator, and on today's Business Spotlight, I'm delighted to welcome Helen Provart, MD and founder of Peak Translations. Good afternoon to you, Helen.
Good afternoon, Kerry. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So, Peak Translations, how long have you been in business, please, and what sort of areas do you specialise in?
Okay, so the company was actually established in 1978. So we've been in business now for 46 years. It was founded by a German to English translator who then developed it through providing different language services, different language combinations through colleagues of his. I then worked for the company from 2005, and then in 2013 he wanted to retire, so I took over the business, bought it off him, and have carried it on since then. We work in a variety of different sectors, so we cover anything from engineering or through to marketing, through to legal, medical as well. So a number of different sectors, and in a lot of languages. So I don't want to say all languages because that's quite a bold claim, but we do have some quite unusual language combinations that are requested. And all of the linguists working on the projects that we work on have got those sector specialisms, why we can cover a number of different sectors. So we'll have engineering specialists working in different languages, we'll have legal specialists, we'll have medical specialists. So it makes sure that the output is appropriate for the country that it's going into, but also the sector it's going into.
Okay, so it sounds like quite a challenge to resource that, Helen. So presumably you've got some core members of the team, but quite an extensive network of different linguists. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. So in-house we have project managers. They are all linguists as well, so they understand what it takes to transfer some content from one language to another. But the linguists that we work with are based all over the world. We prefer them to be in country because language changes all the time. So it makes sure that they keep up with their own language. And we have to have them as native speakers of the language it's going into. So I'm a Spanish translator by profession, but I would always translate from Spanish into English because English is my native language.
Got you. Okay. So in terms of an ideal client or an ideal project, give a little bit more flavor about what that might look like, please, Helen.
Yeah, so as I say, we work across a lot of different sectors, but one of the sectors that we're particularly looking at the moment is the creative sector. So that would be marketing, any kind of marketing really. So from written brochures and material you might take to an exhibition, all the way through to websites and anything online. And one of the things we're looking at is actually to partner with creative agencies. And the reason that we're looking at that is because we're very aware that a lot of our clients will require a multilingual website, but very often that's something that the multilingual side of it can be a bit daunting for creative agencies if they've not got the right people in place supporting them. So what we want to do is be able to support them so that they can provide a full service, a full multilingual service to those international clients that they're working with.
Okay. So let's have a think a bit more broadly about the last few years of interesting turmoil, Helen, since COVID, if you like. So all of these changes, whether it's interest rates or working from home, but maybe more specifically, I guess, in relation to your industry, maybe the impact of AI, Chat GPT, and if you like, automated language translation services, etc. What have been the most impactful environmental changes on your industry and on your business, would you say, Helen?
Mm. Well, I think in terms of COVID, first of all, from an actual business point of view, in terms of turnover, revenue, what have you, it didn't have a huge effect. The biggest effect was obviously how we organised the team and how we organised getting the work done. So there was obviously that shift to work from home. We have got office space, which we do use, although we do use it less so now, and we are now looking at moving completely remotely. So that's certainly one thing that has made a change to our way of working. One of the bigger impacts was actually happening at a similar time was Brexit, because obviously the people we predominantly work with are UK exporters. And so export was affected. It was affected obviously by COVID as well, but it was affected by Brexit and all the changes in regulations, which made trading more difficult. And I think initially when it first happened, a lot of the exporters just carried on because we weren't really sure what was going to change and what was going to happen. But then as time went on, they took a step back, looked at what was going on, looked at where the costs were. So it slowed down the exporting a little bit, and that had a bigger impact on us than COVID actually did. And then obviously, yeah, we've got the AI situation. In our industry, we've had MT, which is machine translation, for a good number of years. And we were having similar conversations years ago when that first came in about how it would affect the industry and what have you. But actually, it's been embraced, and it's something that companies do use, and the industry does use MT, machine translation, for various different reasons. It suits some kind of content. It doesn't suit other kind of content, so it's about finding where it fits. But it is something we've been able to take on board. I think the difference with AI is actually the accessibility by the layperson, if you like. Machine translation is very much something that's been adopted by our industry, but AI is now available to everyone.
Mm.
And I think it is having an impact in that people are perhaps looking at it and thinking, well, we can do this ourselves. I think the danger with it is that because the output is in a language that they can't necessarily understand themselves, it's assumed that it's correct, and there's no checks done on that. Whereas when we're looking at output that's in English that we can understand ourselves, very often if we are using it ourselves, we'll make sure we edit it, we'll check it, we won't necessarily use a raw piece of output. Whereas I think that there is a danger that that could happen with foreign languages because there's nobody to check it. And I think it's really important that we don't, just because the technology is there, we don't necessarily completely rely on it or trust it, and that we do get some expert advice to make sure that it is saying what we want it to say.
Okay, so just come back to what you're saying about resourcing. It sounds like you've built up quite a strong international team. I was just wondering how competitive is your situation now then, Helen, and how do you kind of stand out from the competitors?
Well, it is a hugely competitive industry, but the interesting thing about the industry is that the types of companies vary dramatically. So you can have some really large companies, but the majority of the industry is made up of smaller companies like ourselves, and sometimes even the one-man bands, the freelancers who are working under perhaps a company name. So it's very diverse from that point of view, but still there's a lot of competition out there. I'd say the way we stand out is it's about, for us, there's certainly a quality aspect. We're very much about bringing the most appropriate. So when we talk about quality, what we're talking about is getting the meaning across in the most appropriate and culturally accepted way. So we're certainly about making sure there's high quality involved in everything that we do, but also it's about having a human touch for us. And that not well, I am talking about the translation being provided by humans because we don't do a great deal of the machine translation. It's not where we necessarily sit. But I'm also talking about the customer care side of things from our project management team, the way they look after their clients. We like to understand what it is that they need this piece of translation for, because that will then tell us how we need to go about providing that translation, what it's going to be used for, who the audience are. So we don't treat it as just a transaction. Here's a document, translate it, there you go. We treat it more as a support service to make sure that that translation really works and achieves the objectives that they're wanting it to achieve in the markets that they're looking at.
I guess each client has their own specific style linked to their values and the way they like to express themselves, etc. So yeah, that definitely makes sense. So moving on then, Helen, what about the challenges you face today? And if you think about where you are now, where you're trying to get to, what are the main challenges you've got as a business?
Well, yeah, I think we've touched on some of the main challenges in the sense that it is about standing out from that competition, and it is about making sure that we can get the right customers on board and the right clients on board. I think because of the challenges we've had with exports declining, there have been fewer opportunities within the market, let's say. And so making sure that we can put ourselves in front of the right people, put ourselves in front of the clients who really need to make sure that they're getting those right messages out into those foreign languages is crucial. So the marketing, business development side of things, and yeah, as I say, standing out from that competition, those are probably the biggest challenges we're facing at the moment.
Got you. So what about the aspirations for the business? In terms of what the business might look and feel like in 5 years' time, how different is that to where you are today, would you say, Helen? And what are maybe your other elements of aspiration?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not expecting it to look hugely different in 5 years' time. We'd like to grow the business a little bit, but not drastically. I'm not world domination is not in in my list of aspirations, so I'm not looking for anything like that. So it will be growing the business a little bit in terms of turnover and also in terms of team. So maybe going from 4 to 6. At the moment, we've got 4 people. So going up to 6. But that's really where I'd like to sit. I think that's a comfortable place to sit in the market. And I think it works in terms of the structure of the team and the structure of the processes that we've got in place.
Okay, so moving on to arguably the most important question for viewers to listen to in terms of the lessons that you've learned as a business leader and as a business owner. You gave us some rich history associated with the company. And if you were starting over again in your role as the business leader, Helen, what key lessons have you learned that you would apply if you were starting again, would you say?
Yeah. So I think the biggest lesson is probably communication, making sure that you're constantly communicating with the team that you've got in place, but also in our case with all of our suppliers. It's proved to be a really valuable lesson, and when things have perhaps not gone quite the way we wanted them to, for whatever reason, analysing that, you would see that it's down to perhaps a lack of communication somewhere along the line. So I think that's really important. It's one of the things that I've made sure I try to do with all of the team here. I have quite an open door policy. Come and speak to me whenever you want to, kind of thing, but we have also structured things in place for communication. So that's definitely something that I have learned. On the recruitment side of things as well. So recruitment was certainly a new step for me in terms of having to do it myself when I took over the business, and I did learn by my mistakes. I think we all do at some times, don't we? So definitely making sure that the process is in place, the recruitment process is in place, and making sure you're recruiting for the right reasons. I think I've been guilty in the past of perhaps not doing that, and it's not necessarily worked out. And then owning up to the mistakes as well, I think, is an important one. So if you don't recruit correctly, making sure you do something about that, and do something about it quickly. And then finally, one of the other things that I've learned is also to not be afraid to outsource. I think sometimes it can be, especially as the only owner of the business, and running a small business, I think it can be a lonely place, first of all. So I think building up some support network in terms of the other areas of the business. So obviously we've built up support network in terms of the linguists that we work with and the actual supply of the service. But in terms of other areas, so the business development, the finance, the IT, those kind of areas, I think outsourcing was a really important step. It was frightening at first in terms of knowing who to go to and where to turn to, but I think it's really important to make sure that you do have people around you. And then obviously from an individual point of view, there's the coaching, mentoring side of things, which I think, again, as being a sole owner of a business, you don't have that support network necessarily of somewhere to bounce ideas off. And I think it's really important to have that structure around you.
I definitely agree with that last point, of course. Just picking up your point about suppliers, when you mentioned communication with suppliers being a challenge, let's just explore that, if we may, just briefly. What when you say suppliers, do you mean your subcontractors, as it were, your network of people that are doing the translation locally, or are you thinking more broadly about a range of suppliers?
So I'd say both, but predominantly I was probably thinking about the linguists more than anything. And the reason for that is because there are certain projects that have specific instructions that need to be adhered to. So we need to communicate those properly and make sure that the linguists are fully on board with those. A lot of the linguists that we work with are freelancers, so they will have multiple language companies that they're working with, and each of those language companies will work in a slightly different way. So we've had to recognise as well that we can't just assume that the linguists will know what we want, because another company might ask them for something in a different way. So we've had to make it very clear and make sure we communicate all the time about how we need things to come back to us and what those specific instructions are from particular clients, just to make sure that we're on the same page and that we're all working towards the same goal, which is achieving the objectives of the client at the end.
Indeed, internal communication or communication in business is always a challenge, but I guess especially for people who, by definition, don't have English as their mother tongues, gives an extra angle to it. Okay, well, thank you very much for sharing your story, Helen, and hearing about your lessons, etc. One last question, if I may. If there are any maybe marketing agencies out there or other potential clients that are interested in talking about your services, what might you suggest as a sensible next step?
Well, the next step would be to have a chat. So get in touch. I'm on LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn, or happy to be emailed or telephone call. So just get in touch and we'd jump on a call and just have a chat for half an hour and just see whether it's something that we can work together on, or it's a good fit for both of the companies.
Very good. All right, then, Helen. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much again for your time and your insight, and all the very best with Peak Translations, and muchas gracias y adios.
De nada. Adios.
Thank you, Helen. All the best.
No
Bye for
problem.
now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.